Committee on Good Governance and Millennium Development Goals. You're most welcome, Madam. Please, a round of applause for her.
Please also welcome Dr. Owajoyin Frank, a senior academician, Rivers State University of Science and Technology, Department of Architecture. He holds a PhD from the University of Nottingham. Please also welcome one of our speakers for this session, who will be speaking on Africa, Nigeria, and the issues for the future, is a man, a doctor of medicine, a co-founder of Médecins Sans Frontières, which we all know here as Doctors Without Borders, a passionate activist for humanitarian causes, former foreign minister of France and European affairs. Please welcome Bernard Kouchner.
And we'll invite a renowned We'd like to invite a renowned academician and political commentator, professor of political economy at the Lagos State Business School, founder of the Center for Value and Leadership Congress. He is a versatile Nigerian, having schooled across the country from Kano to Gazua to Ibadan to Nsukka and Onitsha. Of course, speaking of the one and only Professor Pat Otomi. Professor will come quickly to the lectern for his presentation.
Governor, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to speak for just 3 or 4 minutes because I have a flight already boarding that I have to be on. Nigeria's democracy issues challenges. The first question is why democracy? Democracy matters because it's about inclusion. Easiest way to sum it up is a folk statement by a one-time US president, which the Malaysians have made their mantra, which says very simply that it's better for everyone to be inside the house, pissing out, than for some people to be outside the house, pissing in. You can imagine that inside the house will not smell good. Inclusion, ownership by the people makes it easier to mobilize their energies to create that pursuit of all happiness for everybody. Democracy is also very important because of legitimacy. No regime, it doesn't matter how much power it has, military strength or whatever, can succeed without some level of legitimacy. And democracies provide legitimacy to regimes. When the politics of power erosion begins, the legitimacy of that regime is being pulled away, and eventually the regime is unable to sustain itself and sustain progress. There's also the very critical fact that we have seen that when you don't have everybody feeling a part of something, a high degree of uncertainty ensues, and when there is uncertainty, there's very little progress. In 1998, I wrote a book titled Managing Uncertainty, Competition and Strategy in Emerging Economies, and it speaks to the context and the environment of business and performance of governments. Finally, I think that if you want to look quickly at issues, and I was going to walk through the evolution of the political economy of democracy in Nigeria. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have that time to do that, but I'll just bring one quick little thought about the challenge of sustaining Nigeria's democracy. There's a friend of mine who likes to make the point about what is called the implied contract at the founding of Nigeria. That Nigeria was a structure for elites to exchange privileges. And so if somebody comes from Kano and he gets a position, because he's in that position, you really need to tell, if he's misbehaving, go to his MA and apologize and work out something. So it is not really government of the people, for the people, by the people. in the interest of the common good of all, but essentially an elite arrangement for exchange of privileges. This has been very damaging for our democracy. And a number of issues have flowed out of the nature of this democracy, and I'll just mention them and I'll quit. And I hope that the panel can do justice to it. There's a measure of how people see democracy in countries around Africa. It's called the Afro Barometer. In 1999, I was privileged to work with some of my colleagues from the US who were developing the Afro Barometer. Nigerians' expectation and feeling for democracy was remarkably high. Today, it is so low that the legitimacy of the Nigerian regime is withering away. So, rebuilding Nigerian democracy for Nigerian people to feel part of this system is something that must happen if we won't see this system just go away, as happens when the politics of power erosion comes in. Professor Tamuno talked about poverty. You cannot have a democracy when most of the people are poor. The Gini index, the measure of income distribution in Nigeria, is getting much, much worse. Care for people. It's so sad that I don't have the time I would have had. I would have begun with a tribute to Dr. Kuchner. I have written and spoken so much about you, and I remember very fondly the work that you did in Biafra. Thank you. It's good to have you here. And I believe that it's only in caring about all the people that ultimately people have ownership of a democratic process and sustain it. I'm afraid that's all I can say today, but I have the points that I was going to make here, and I think they can form a basis of our conversation. Thank you so very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Dr. Part3. Please let's put our hands together one more time for him. Would like to invite to join just one more panelist, a professor of law, former dean, Faculty of Law, University of Nigeria. He was also former chairman, Academic Staff Union of Universities of the University of Nigeria. Please welcome Professor George Amadi. We would like to immediately go into the presentation by Monsieur Bernard Kouchner, who will be speaking on Africa, Nigeria, and the issues for the future.
Well, doesn't matter. Excellency, Mr. Governor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Governor, for the birthday party yesterday. And another time, happy birthday to you. Well, first of all, let me tell you how emotional is to be here on such an item. Africa, Nigeria, humanitarianism. But to be in Port Harcourt, only a few miles away from the Awo Omama Community Hospital where I started my long humanitarian career. In '68, during the cruel conflict Nigeria-Biafra, in which 1 million of innocent civilians has lost their life in fighting and starvation, shocked by the magnitude of the conflict, as a young doctor with my friend Dr. Rekamier, I advocate for the right to intervene to help people facing humanitarian catastrophes. The ideal of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, was born here in Nigeria. MSF main purpose was therefore to draw attention